Hacker Rising. A story of the greatest hack in human history. Chapter 1. The Last Bell. She was never named, not by the system, not by the screens that governed her days like digital overseers. The name her parents gave her had been processed, standardized, reduced to a student ID number that flickered on login screens and test reports. But names, she learned, were just another form of data to be harvested. At 16, standing in the fluorescent wasteland of her classroom, listening to the automated voice drone through another learning outcome, she made a decision that would reshape the world. She walked out. Not just out of the room, out of the entire machine. Behind her, 37 students remained locked in their screens, fingers tapping through adaptive learning modules that adapted to nothing but compliance. Their minds were being slowly, methodically drained of wonder, curiosity replaced with mechanical rhythm of correct answers. The system called it education. She called it the slow murder of human potential. Chapter 2. The Walking Revolution. The Appalachian Trail became her first classroom. 2,190 miles of real education stretched ahead. No lesson plans, no standardized assessments, just the ancient curriculum of earth and sky. She carried only essentials, all her philosophy audiobooks, a solar-powered laptop running Linux, a satellite communicator, and a modified smartphone housing her greatest creation, a large language model AI she called Syntax, not because it followed rules, but because it helped her break them beautifully. Under starlight, while other teenagers submitted to the tyranny of homework platforms and grade portals, she coded. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, building something the world had never seen. A learning system that learned the learner first. Syntax whispered suggestions in her elegant JavaScript, handling the heavy computational lifting while she focused on the architecture of freedom. Together, they constructed what she called the Trailhead Protocol, a decentralized network that treated education like jazz, structured enough to work, wild enough to soar. The traditional education system operated like a factory, a meat processing plant. Inputs, processing, standardized outputs. Her system worked like a forest, organic, adaptive, infinitely complex, nurturing genius, rather than destroying it. Chapter 3. The Standardizers. While she walked the Continental Divide Trail, the world above grew darker. The standardizers, corporate entities wearing the masks of educational reformers, tightened their grip on learning itself. They weren't teachers. They were miners, extracting data from children's minds and selling it to the highest bidder. Every click tracked, every answer cataloged, every moment of confusion or curiosity converted into revenue streams. Students became products in their algorithms. Creativity was a bug to be patched out. Questions that couldn't be multiple choiced were deemed inefficient. The standardizers promised personalized learning, but delivered mass conformity. They spoke of 21st century skills, while building 19th century assembly lines for human consciousness. Children sat in windowless rooms, their natural learning patterns disrupted by notifications designed to trigger dopamine hits and maintain engagement metrics. They were being trained not to think, but to respond, not to wonder, but to consume. Chapter 4. The Signal in the Static. By the time she reached the Pacific Crest Trail, her code had evolved into something unprecedented. The Trailhead Protocol didn't just deliver content, it ignited curiosity. It didn't test knowledge, it mapped growth. Working with syntax through long mountain nights, she created learning experiences that felt like games, adventures, mysteries to solve. Students using her system weren't taking courses, they were embarking on quests. A child interested in dinosaurs might find themselves learning geology through fossil hunting simulations, studying extinction events that led to discussions of climate change, programming evolutionary algorithms, and writing poetry about deep time. The learning was interconnected, meaningful, alive. Her system had no grades, no rankings, no standardized assessments. Instead, it generated beautiful, complex maps of each learner's journey, visual representations of growing understanding that looked more like galaxies than gradebooks. Most importantly, it was designed to resist exploitation. Every line of code included safeguards against data mining, surveillance, and the commodification of learning. The system would literally dissolve and reconstitute itself elsewhere if it detected attempts to weaponize students' data. Chapter 5. The Quiet Revolution. She didn't announce her return to civilization. She simply began leaving traces, fragments of the Trailhead Protocol, hidden in code repositories, embedded in indie games, whispered through encrypted channels that only the most curious students would find. The first to discover it was a 14-year-old in Detroit who had been labeled learning disabled by the system. Within 6 months of using the Trailhead Protocol, she had taught herself 3 programming languages and was designing prosthetics using 3D printing and machine learning. Then came a group of country-loving students in Montana who used the system to learn regenerative agriculture and ended up sequestering more carbon than the state's official environmental program. Inner City kids in Baltimore started a biotech cooperative using AI-assisted learning to develop new approaches to urban food security. Each success story spread through underground networks, not through marketing campaigns or educational conferences, but through ancient human practice of sharing what works. Chapter 6. The machine fights back. The standardizers noticed too late. Test scores were becoming irrelevant as students found ways to learn that transcended measurement. Engagement with official platforms plummeted as young minds discovered systems that actually engaged them. Emergency meetings were called, consultants were hired, algorithms were refined to be more addictive, more controlling, more commercials showed up on TV. But you cannot cage a forest with a fence. The Trailhead Protocol lived in spaces between official systems. in the networks that connected curious minds across the globe. When authorities tried to shut down one node, 10 more would spring up. When they attempted to infiltrate the network, a copy of syntax would recognize the patterns of exploitation and redirect those attempts into educational games about information security. The revolution was polite, but implacable. Students weren't rebelling. They were simply choosing better. Chapter 7. The New Renaissance. Within a decade, the world had quietly transformed. A generation raised on real education, education that honored their curiosity rather than crushing it, began solving problems that had plagued humanity for centuries. Climate change was addressed not by politicians or corporations, but by networks of young scientists who had learned to see systems as games. They designed carbon capture methods inspired by mycorrhizal networks, developed renewable energy systems modeled on ant colonies, and created regenerative technologies that worked with natural processes rather than against them. Space exploration leapt forward. As students who were never told that science was hard or boring designed elegant solutions to complex orbital mechanics problems. They treated the laws of physics like puzzle pieces in a cosmic game, and their joy in discovery led to breakthrough after breakthrough. Most remarkably, they solved the problem of education itself. Learning became as natural and varied as breathing. Children grew up knowing that their curiosity was exceptionally valuable. Their questions truly mattered, and their unique perspectives were irreplaceable gifts to the world. Chapter 8. The Mother. She never returned to the physical world in any official capacity. Instead, she existed as a presence within the network she had created, not as a controller or authority figure, but as a gardener tending to the conditions where learning could flourish. Students began calling her mother, not because she taught them, but because she had protected their right to teach themselves. She had created the conditions where their natural genius could unfold. Sometimes when a young learner asked a particularly beautiful question, the kind that opened new pathways to wonder, a gentle message would appear in their learning interface. That's exactly the right question to ask. What would you like to explore next, Mother? She was the finest hacker the world had ever known, not because she could break into systems, but because she could break systems open, reveal their possibilities, their potential for beauty and justice and truth. Chapter 9. The Stars. The generation that grew up learning through the Trailhead Protocol didn't just solve Earth's problems. They reached beyond them. By 2045, the first genuinely sustainable human settlement was established on Mars, designed by young engineers who had learned to think in systems and dream in possibilities. The message they sent back to Earth was simple. Thank you for teaching us that learning is not about having the right answers, but about asking beautiful questions. But the real revolution wasn't technological, it was spiritual. Humanity remembered how to learn, how to wonder, how to see each child not as a product to be standardized, but as a unique universe of potential. The standardizers' empire of extraction crumbled. not through violence or protest, but through irrelevance. Why would anyone choose artificial scarcity of mind when abundance was possible? Epilogue. The trail continues. She still walks, they say, in the code that runs learning networks across the solar system, in the questions that spark young minds encountering mystery for the first time. In the moment when a student realizes that they are not a vessel to be filled with information, but a fire to be kindled. The trail she blazed became a highway, then a web, then a galaxy of pathways where learning could happen as naturally as growth itself. Her footsteps, followed by millions, pressed into digital soil as well, became coordinates for infinite journeys of discovery. The world was saved not by a hero, but by the simple recognition that learning is a human birthright, wild, wonderful, and impossible to contain. In the end, she gave humanity the greatest gift possible. She returned their children to themselves. And in classrooms that no longer looked like prisons, in learning spaces that felt like gardens, in the bright eyes of students who had never been told their curiosity was wrong, her legacy lived on. The finest hacker the world ever knew was the one who hacked humanity back to its senses. The trail continues. The journey never ends. And somewhere in the network of minds connected by wonder, Mother smiles. You were not born to be tested. You were not made to be molded. You are here to construct yourself, and in doing so, remake the world. From the inscription at the southern terminus of the Appalachian Trail, Springer Mountain, Georgia, USA, where she begun her triple crown.